I initially voiced my frustration with this. I said, when Netanyahu said this was an unfortunate mistake, I said that he's lying and that I'm frustrated not only with him, but all the people who are defending him. You responded by saying, more anti-Semitism. Help me understand, what was anti-Semitic about the statement that I made?
Mark, you're starting with the assumption that Netanyahu was lying. You're starting with he's full of crap, which is not true. You can disagree with Netanyahu. There are plenty of Jews inside and outside of Israel who are not fans of Netanyahu. He's a very polarizing figure, no doubt. But to start with the assumption that he must be lying, why start there? Why treat Israel differently than every other country on earth? Why is Israel held to sort of this impossible standard of perfection that no other country comes close to being required of them? I don't know what happened in Rafah. I know what I'm being told. I know the reports that are coming out. Apparently, there were some high-ranking terrorists in that location. And the latest, I'm glad we're reporting this on the 29th. The latest that I've seen is that there was some shrapnel that actually sort of bounced off of the actual target and ultimately hit a camp, hit a tent of some kind, and it burst into flames. And no doubt, it's a horrendous situation, right? It's any loss of life is just terrible. But I think it's important that we not start with an assumption that everything Netanyahu says is a lie, or that everything that Israel does or says is a lie. We know that Israel, like all other Western nations, does not target civilians. It absolutely doesn't target civilians. There's 1,000 reasons why it doesn't target civilians. And accidents and unfortunate situations happen. But let's just make this clear. You started your opening monologue by talking about what more has to happen. There is a very simple way that this could end in the next, hour. Hamas can release the hostages and they can lay down their weapons. That's it.
So let's get through. You laid out about 7 things. So
Sure.
First, Saudi Arabia made an argument that they don't know what happened with Jamal Khashoggi. The evidence suggests that they do.
Great.
Reports suggest that they do. I said that Mohammed bin Salman was lying. I wasn't the only one who said that. I'm not special. A lot of people said that. You probably think he was lying.
Probably. Yep.
Does that make you Islamophobic?
No, not at all.
So why can I disagree with a Muslim and not be Islamophobic? But if I don't trust Netanyahu, who has a history of lying, it's anti-Semitic. Why can't I just not believe him? You say holding Israel to an impossible standard. I think maybe the most running joke and the most accepted commentary in all of the world are that 2 people are liars, and you're one of them. Lawyers and politicians. The average citizen in almost any country in the world doesn't trust their leadership. They don't trust the politicians. If you walked into Palestine right now and asked them if they trust Mahmoud Abbas, they say, of course not. If you went into Gaza and asked them if they trusted the leadership of Hamas, they say, of course not. If I went to Egypt and said, do you trust Sisi? They say, of course not. I just started this monologue by saying Biden is a liar. So it seems to me that you're holding an exceptional standard. I've called all these people liars, and it's okay. But why can I not mistrust or distrust Netanyahu without it being, by definition, anti-Semitic?
What is it that you're claiming that Bibi Netanyahu was lying about? He was saying, he was being asked about what happened in Rafah. Was this somehow the targeting of civilians? And he said, no, this was a terrible mistake, and we're going to investigate.
Right, what I'm saying is, if I don't trust him, is it possible to not trust Netanyahu without being anti-Semitic?
Yes.
So what was it about me that made me not among the people who distrust him, who are not anti-Semitic?
Because what you have to look at what Netanyahu was saying. What he was saying is that this was a mistake and we're going to investigate. If he was lying, Okay, the opposite of this was a mistake is that this was intentional, right? Civilians were either accidentally killed or they were intentionally killed. It can't be both, right? They were either targeted or they weren't targeted. And when Netanyahu says they were not targeted, and you say he's lying, the opposite must be true, which is that they were targeted.
Right, but what I'm saying is it possible to believe that that it wasn't a mistake, a tragic mistake, without being anti-Semitic? Or is it the only so unless I'm not, the only way to not be an anti-Semite is to believe that it was a mistake?
I'm not saying you have to believe or disbelieve him.
No, but you're saying that I'm that I was anti-Semitic because I didn't believe him.
You're starting with the assumption that he's lying, and the
based on the evidence.
See, now we're getting somewhere. There is no evidence.
No.
About what happened in Rafah yet.
No. What I'm saying is, if 5 days in a row you're late to work and you're drunk, and on the 6th day you come to work late and you say, my car wouldn't start, I can say I don't believe you. And if you're Jewish and I don't believe you, that doesn't make me an anti-Semite. I'm allowed to not trust Netanyahu. It has nothing to do with him not being Jewish. It has nothing to do with him being Jewish. It's the fact that he consistently lied. Netanyahu has literally been in power in some form or fashion for 3 decades, and he has consistently lied to Israelis. He has lied to the global community. He has lied to America. And I'm saying that based on the evidence, I do not believe that he is telling the truth. And specifically, to give you more specificity, the thing I was really saying he was lying about was the tragic part, not the mistake part. But I actually think both aren't true. I don't believe he cares if Palestinians die or not. And I'm allowed to believe that without being anti-Semitic. I think the problem is that there is it's wielded so quickly and so effortlessly, so semi-automatically, that now there's a moment where I can't even say a politician is lying without it being anti-Semite, without saying it's anti-Semite. If Hillary Clinton were the Secretary of State right now, you know what she would have said? I agree with Bibi. And I would say she was lying. And that wouldn't make me sexist. It would just mean I don't believe her. You know why I don't believe Hillary Clinton? Because her lips were moving and Clinton's lie. They have a history of lying, so I'm allowed to not believe her. Netanyahu, specifically, to get even more, to drill down a little bit more so we don't stay in the same place.
Sure.
Netanyahu specifically has said, as have other Israeli leaders, that they want a 2-state solution. Right? When Netanyahu campaigns, I've been covering Netanyahu for decades now. In Hebrew, you know what he says? We're not going to do a 2-state solution because we can't trust Palestinians. When he campaigns internationally in English, you know what he says? We're going to fight for a 2-state solution. I know you know that that's a fact. I'm not. That's not debatable. That's demonstrable. Let me be clear.
You know what the Palestinians say? Same thing.
That's my point. They're all lying. But
okay.
No. But I'm saying they're all lying. And you're saying that the only one that produces an accusation of racism is if I say an Israeli is lying. That's my problem with it. Yeah. But to get beyond that, my point is, this isn't as simple as Hamas just needs to put the weapons down. Hamas just needs to. Even Bibi said right now that they're going to continue this. This does not. He said there will be a permanent presence of Israel inside of the West Bank, but also in Gaza. He has said now that a 2-state solution is impossible. He has said that there will always be not just an external on the border, but an internal security presence of Israel forever. He is saying that everything he said before ain't happening. So this idea, and that he's going to continue in Rafah, even if Hamas were to surrender right now. So even what you're saying within this is not what Bibi is saying. So either Bibi's not telling the truth, or your analysis of Bibi isn't accurate.
I think you're missing the context of the particular tweet that started this conversation.
Okay.
The tweet was about what happened in Rafah. We have a situation where I think dozens of men, women, and children were killed, maybe more. I don't know what the exact number is. It's pretty much impossible.
45 as of today.
Well, it's pretty impossible to get really accurate numbers. But I'm not minimizing the loss of life. Obviously. But what he said was,
it's impossible to get accurate numbers. We had 45 bodies. Why is it impossible?
Well, because the Gaza Health Ministry has a long history of overstating.
Give me an example.
Well, they routinely say 500 people die per day. Even the WHO has come out, and the WHO is no friend of Israel. Even they've said that the initial numbers were wrong. There's a long-standing history.
In every war in Gaza so far, I'm using war in quotes, in Israel, the Gazan Health Ministry has been within 4% of the international community, and it's been within 4% of Israel's numbers in every war. So if you're saying Hamas's numbers are grossly off, you're also saying Israel's numbers and Amnesty International's numbers and the UN's numbers are off. You're saying everybody's numbers are off, including Israel's. So again, there's no basis for this. Also, Hamas doesn't control, as I hope you know, doesn't control the health ministry. That's a whole different wing. And so if historically if historically the Gazan Health Ministry numbers are accurate, I'm not sure why you say they have a long history of being inaccurate. I think, but we can move on. But I just want to make that fact check so that people don't believe what you're saying is true.
Okay, but the Gaza Health Ministry is run by Hamas. Every municipal entity in all of Gaza
is run by the military wing of Hamas. The military wing of Hamas has absolutely no impact on the Gazan Health Ministry. But again, historically, but again, this is verifiable information.
Is there a non-military wing of Hamas?
Yes, and you should know that if you're going to debate this issue. Yes, there is. You do understand that
there's a non-military wing of Al Qaeda. If you're a member of Hamas, you're a terrorist, and you should be killed. And I don't care what your title is.
Okay, you
you're a member of Al Qaeda, you die. If you're a member of ISIS, you die.
Okay, so I'm going to take a step back just for factual purposes here. ISIS is not a governmental organization. You acknowledge that, right?
Yes, it has no standing as a government entity. I agree.
Right. Hamas democratically won an election and has a civil wing, and then over the subsequent years, they also have an armed, a militant wing. They have a government wing.
Hamas came to power in a 2005 referendum, and then they executed all of their political enemies. So the last came in town. They executed every member of the top.
Just on the same page. Are you disputing that there is a military wing and a civil wing of Hamas? You're saying that's not true.
That is not true. Hamas is Hamas.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what patch you're wearing. They don't even wear patches. They wear civilian clothes.
So I will allow the people watching this to Google for themselves. And I've spent much time in Palestine, much time in the region. That's just factually untrue, but we can get past that. The point is, if historically, you acknowledge that historically Hamas's death numbers are within 4% of the international communities and Israel's. You acknowledge it. That's a fact.
I don't know that. I've read reports, at least in this conflict, that they've been extremely exaggerated.
So you've only read on this conflict in the last 7 months.
I can only tell you what I've read about.
That's fair. You have, but you began by saying they have a long history. Is it fair to say
I'll rephrase.
Okay.
Since the attacks of October 7th, they have vastly inflated the numbers of dead. They also differentiate. They don't differentiate between Hamas and non-Hamas. Okay,
so two things. One, the numbers from the Gazan Health Ministry right now, which are around 36,000, I just don't have the exact number in front of me, have not been disproven. In fact, they're actually conservative. There are about 8,000 people under the rubble right now still. So there is absolutely no evidence that there are not 35,000 people. There's probably more like 43,000 people dead. If you have a source that disproves that, send it to me. I'll post it with an apology.
My point is just it's impossible to know that number with any degree of certainty. I'm not disputing that a lot of people are dead. I want to be clear. The loss of life is tragic, and I'm not downplaying the loss of any human life. And
was it preventable?
Whether it's 10,000 or 40,000, it's a lot of people.
Was it foreseeable?
What Hamas?
That if you do a ground invasion of Rafah, that there'd be mass death.
There are always civilian deaths in conflict.
That wasn't my question. That wasn't my question.
That was your question.
No. Then allow me to be more specific or more clear.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, was the tragic dimension of it foreseeable before the invasion of Rafah? That's what I'm asking. Obviously, people are going to die. But what I'm saying is, he's saying it's a tragic mistake, and I'm saying it was foreseeable. Do you disagree with that?
It was foreseeable that civilians might be killed. It's always foreseeable that civilians might be killed.
So let's say that.
You know that every conflict.
Let me ask you a question. That's not exactly what I'm saying, but I don't want to get into the semantics. What I'm saying is the global community warned Netanyahu that if you do a ground invasion in Rafah, there will be a humanitarian crisis, that it may be the worst humanitarian crisis that we've seen in the region, that it will produce a disaster that is beyond anything we have seen in the region. So what I'm saying is that this isn't a normal, you make an omelet, you got to break some eggs situation. Germany, you would consider Germany a friend of Israel, correct? At least politically, correct?
Yeah, well, yes, in 2024, yes.
As opposed to when?
Right.
As opposed to when?
1930s, 1940s.
You realize that Israel didn't exist in the 1930s and 1940s until 1948.
The state of Israel did not.
That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the issue. When I'm talking about the issues, I'm talking about the state of Israel.
I agree. Germany has good relations with Israel right now. Yes.
Right. Germany has been, in terms of global diplomatic alliances, you got Germany, you got France, you got the UK, you got the United States, 4 of Israel's closest friends, right? They all said the same thing. Don't invade Rafah because it's going to create a humanitarian disaster, a crisis. It is going to be of epic proportion. Everybody said that. And literally everything that they said and the international community said, everything that the Red Cross said, everything that everybody said has proven to be true. And Netanyahu, I don't think he didn't read the intelligence. I think he's a very smart man. I think he read all the data, all the intelligence, and he made a choice. And I'm saying that when you make a choice with all that information, you can't then say, oh my God, that's a tragic accident. That I couldn't have foreseen that happening. What an awful thing. I don't think you can make that claim. And more fundamentally, you can disagree with me, but I have a right to make that analysis of Netanyahu based on all the evidence I just gave without being anti-Semitic.
That's not what your tweet said.
He's lying.
If your tweet simply said, we know that if there's going to be some kind of an attack in Rafah, the unintended consequences are going to be civilian deaths. That's not what your tweet said.
I said he's lying. He said it was a tragic mistake. I'm saying I don't think it's a mistake, and I don't think he finds it tragic.
I think the only evidence is that it was a mistake. If it was not a mistake, it was intentional. That's the opposite of a mistake by definition. If it wasn't a mistake, it was intentional. The idea that there was intentional killing of civilians.
No, what I'm saying is if I, for example, were to do my fire juggling act at a gas station with lots of people around, I really might just want to entertain the kids. I might just want to raise some money, right? I may not. And if you say, look, Mark, it's a really bad idea. Gas stations are a really bad place to play with fire. And I do it anyway. I could say to you, Matt, and I may even hire you to be my attorney on this. I may say, look, I really didn't want to hurt any kids, but I really wanted to do this juggling act. And you say, well, Matt, Mark, but everybody told you it's dangerous. And everybody told you the consequences of playing with fire at a gas station. And I said, yeah, but I didn't want to hurt anybody. At some point, the recklessness of it, the indifference to the danger of it is so extreme that I can't say, I didn't have that intention. It was an accident. And I'm saying that when you run into a refugee camp, Rafah can fit 250,000 people in it on a normal day. At the height of this quote unquote war, which was about 2 weeks ago in terms of the density of Rafah, there were 1.5 million people there. There's absolutely no way to do a ground invasion and not kill a disproportionate number of civilians. If 45 people die and they only say they got 2 Hamas, do you think that's a fair ratio?
Well, there's a number of facts there that you're throwing out that are problematic. One is this was not a ground invasion. I don't remember if this was a missile strike from an aircraft or if it was a missile strike.
Are you saying that no tanks and troops went into Gaza? Everything was from the air in the last 2 weeks?
The 45 people who died.
No, I'm speaking about the entire mission in Rafah. You're right. It is an airstrike on Sunday. I'm talking about the entire mission has been a mission of recklessness, and it's a ground invasion. It's tanks. It's troops. As soon as they took over the border in Egypt, it's been tanks, troops, and air.
Right, but you're missing something. The analogy you gave about juggling fire sticks at a gas station, you're missing something. The analysis for Israel is not fire sticks at a gas station. There are human beings who are being held captive in Rafah. The leaders, at least the leaders who haven't fled to Qatar and other countries, the leaders of Hamas are now basically stuck in Rafah. It's the last holdout. In fact, just today, they found 85 tunnels, many of them actually going into Egypt.
Ask a clarifying question. You said people are being held captive in Rafah. Who's being held captive in Rafah?
Israelis, Americans.
What does
The
that have to
best
do with I'm trying. Okay, maybe I'm not following. Continue.
Yeah, Israel, like all sovereign nations, has an obligation, not just the right, but an absolute obligation to go in and get their people out.
And you're saying the missile strike was to get hostages free?
No, it's to kill Hamas terrorists, which is part of the process. Why can't they kill Hamas terrorists?
What do hostages have to do with the point we're discussing? Then I'm not following.
The point is, Israel conducted a missile strike targeted to take out senior members of Hamas, which apparently they did. There's nothing improper about that. They're supposed to do that.
Okay.
Not only can they, but they should. They must do that. They have an obligation. Any country does.
Let me ask you a question. If you knew in retrospect that there'd be 2 members of Hamas and 45 innocent Palestinians there, would you still carry out the mission?
You're using a wrong analogy, because the best available evidence is that some shrapnel went in a weird direction, not where the actual 2 dead terrorists.
But you missed a piece of my point, though. There are 6-8 times as many people in there. It's an unnaturally dense area inside of a historically unnaturally dense area. So the chances of shrapnel setting something on fire, if I accept the Israeli narrative, are actually quite high. Just like even if I'm a great juggler, the chances of it catching on fire are greater because the danger is greater. That's the point I'm making. But I'm asking you again.
No, I agree. I understand that. But you're missing something that I think is important.
Tell me.
You're in the position because of Hamas. At the end of the day, all of this, everyone who dies in Gaza, Palestinian, Muslim, Jewish, whatever they might be, there's Christians in Gaza. Every single one who dies because of Hamas, whether it's an Israeli bullet or not. The cause is unquestionably Hamas.
I see. Let me ask you a question about that. So wouldn't that be collective punishment?
No.
Why not? Why not?
They're not being punished.
You're saying if they die, they're dying because of the actions of Hamas, even if it's Israel's bullets.
They're not being punished.
You don't think death is punishment?
They are bystanders who are unfortunately dying because of the situation that Hamas has put them in.
What I'm saying is, if Israel doesn't, hold on, I can't let you. If Israel does an action as a response to Hamas's action that has a negative impact on Palestinians to the point of endangering them or doing considerable harm, that is punishment by any standard. For example, if you stop electricity into a hospital because Hamas struck on October 7th, that's harm. That is demonstrable harm. And the Israeli leadership, including, Netanyahu on down, have said that because of Hamas's action, they're cutting electricity, they're cutting fuel. At one point, they cut humanitarian aid in. You're saying that's not collective punishment?
No. That's Israel defending itself. That's Israel doing what it has to do to get its people out.
How is cutting electricity? So what about that would have to be different for it to be collective punishment? They
are not being punished. The fuel, the electricity.
If you cut electricity off in a hospital, you know for a fact that babies died off the respirator. You know this is not disputable. Even Israel acknowledges this. You're saying that's not punishment?
Hamas leadership operates out of hospitals intentionally. They use babies as shields.
Give me evidence of that.
This is all decades of their playbook.
Do you have the evidence of that?
On Hamas. Every dead baby is a tragedy, and it is all because of Hamas.
Let me ask you a question. Knowing the number of Palestinians in there who are innocent, you're saying that mission was reasonable and fair, correct?
Yeah, the alternative would be to reward Hamas.
Let me just ask. If we were to swap out those innocent Palestinians with Israeli Palestinians, would you still do the mission?
Yes.
So you're telling me that if there were 1.5 million Israelis and 2 Hamas leaders inside of Rafah, you would support a military strike?
Well, you're asking me a question that is based on facts that don't even remotely exist.
You went to law school. It's a hypothetical. What I'm saying is that, again, if we're saying that the innocent civilian casualties are an a unfortunate but necessary consequence, I'm saying, would your calculus change at all if they are Israeli versus if they're Palestinian?
No. At the end of the day, anyone who dies is ultimately their sole responsibility for that lies with Hamas. But here's the feeling: Israel doesn't.
That's not what the law says. That's not international law.
Mark, you're playing. I don't know what international law is. Mark, you're playing.
You should.
Israel. No, here's the problem. You were creating hypotheticals that are not applicable to what's going on. Israel doesn't have to say, well, what if this, what if that? Israel has to
Yes,
deal
they do.
No, they do not. Countries have to deal with the facts as they are on the ground.
No, that's a Netanyahu quote.
What would you have Israel do? Be like, well, you get to keep the hostages because you surround them with civilians.
Let me ask you a question.
That's what they're doing.
So you don't think that Israel has a duty to avoid killing civilians?
Israel,
a legal duty.
But here's the problem.
No. Does Israel have a legal? Does Israel have a legal duty? It's just a quick, simple yes or no. Does Israel have a legal duty to avoid killing civilians?
Your question is in fact anti-Semitic, and here's why. You are assuming in your question that Israel doesn't avoid killing civilians.
No, I didn't assume anything. I'm asking you a question. The reason I'm asking you is because you said that you don't know what international law is. I was making an argument to you that there are very clear dictates of international law that Israel claims to abide by. I was making the point from your perspective that Israel says it does follow international law. And after the ICJ decision, they said we already follow international law. So it's just true. But that's all I'm saying. You call me an anti-Semite again.
Because you're saying, well, doesn't Israel have to follow international law by having a duty to protect civilians? You're assuming Israel is not already doing that. Israel is protecting civilians. Mark, Israel is protecting civilians more than the United States ever did.
I disagree.
Every serious scholar of war, go have John Spencer on your podcast. Every serious scholar of war has said that Israel has done more to minimize civilian casualties than any nation ever to fight any kind of an insurgency or ground war. Do you know what we did to Mosul?
Yeah, I'm not defending. You're arguing a straw man. I wasn't disagreeing that the U.S. kills a lot of innocent people. I think the U.S. has committed gross war crimes.
I don't think it's a war crime. Civilians are unfortunately killed.
But do you see the difference? I'm allowed to say that Obama and Clinton and Bush and Trump, and really not Trump, but the others committed war crimes in the Middle East, right? I've said that consistently.
You're afraid to say that.
But do you see the difference? I said America committed war crimes in the Middle East. You said I'm wrong. I said Saudi Arabia is a liar. You said I'm right. I said the Clintons are liars. You said I'm right. I say Netanyahu is a liar, and I'm an anti-Semite.
You're not. It's not that you're saying that he's a liar. If you want to generically say that Netanyahu is a liar, look, but what is it you're not believing him?
Okay,
it's not that you're not believing him about some broad, abstract, policy issue that reasonable people disagree with.
Yeah, I'm going to restate because I know we got to go. Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying two things.
I got time. Let's go.
I'm saying two things. One, he has a long history of lying, independent of war. The moment he steps out of the prime minister's seat, he will likely go to jail because of his corruption and dishonesty.
He will not spend a moment in jail.
Okay, he will be convicted of a crime that is connected to character and lying. Is that fair?
He will not be convicted of a crime.
Okay, will he be charged with a crime?
Probably not.
Okay, will he be accused of a crime?
He's accused of crimes all the time. He's Bibi Netanyahu.
What percentage of the Israeli public do you think believes that Netanyahu is a dishonest person? Would you guess?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I no doubt he's controversial within Israel.
That's not the question. Would you at least concede that at least somewhere between 25 and 50% of the Israeli voting public does not trust Netanyahu? Is that fair to say?
I'm willing to speculate, but I don't know the real number. So
I'll look at the polls, but if you haven't looked at the polls, I won't argue. But my point is, my point is, lots of people in Israel don't trust Netanyahu. Do you spend time in Israel?
I agree with that. I agree with you.
And so it is possible to not trust Netanyahu legitimately. Once you don't trust somebody, you have a right to not believe them when they say things that are questionable. He has a long history of being dishonest, just like Bush, just like Clinton, just like Biden, just like Trump, just like Milei in Argentina, just like we're going down the list. Politicians lie, and I don't trust them. Just like governments are fundamentally corrupt. Some are more corrupt than others.
Why not? Mark, you look big picture. Do politicians lie? Of course, I'm not disputing that.
No, give me 10 more seconds. So I'm saying, first, he not only lies like the way all politicians lie, I'm saying he has a demonstrable track record of being dishonest. and being dishonest on diplomatic efforts around Israel-Palestine. I named some of them, right? And then on top of that, I'm saying that when I look at the evidence, and when I look at the global community's warnings of him, to him, and when I look at how precise Israel has the military capacity to be and how sloppy they have been in multiple examples that I could give you since October 7th, it feels to me like at worst intentional and at best really recklessness and indifference. And what I'm saying is that makes me not trust him. But my point is there has to be room for me to not trust him, because by your logic, if I am definitionally anti-Semitic because I don't trust what Netanyahu said about Rafah, then you're saying the only way to not be anti-Semitic is to believe that those 45 kids died by accident, and that's an unfair standard, because you don't mind me not trusting. You didn't ask me for a shred of evidence of why I don't trust Saudi Arabia. You didn't ask for a shred of evidence of why I don't trust North Korea, or why I don't trust Putin, or why I don't trust Biden, my own president in this country. You didn't ask for a shred of evidence, and you were fine with me calling them liars. You're the one with the Israeli exception. That's the only place where you suddenly say, if you don't trust them, it must be anti-Semitic until proven otherwise.
Listen, I do hear what you're saying. I think you're confusing the specific with the abstract. You want to call Biden in the abstract a liar? I don't really care. You want to call Netanyahu a liar in the abstract? I don't really care. Lots of people think Netanyahu.
I didn't say that. In this case, I gave examples.
That's my point. One of two things is true. Either they targeted civilians, they intended to kill.
Yes, I believe Israel targets civilians. I do.
Right, without any evidence. And it's contrary to all the evidence. That's anti-Semitic.
Okay.
It's the anti-Semitism.
Okay, two things.
There's no evidence for that, but you believe it anyway. Why? Because you don't like Israel. That's anti-Semitism.
Okay, let's pause. Let's pause.
That's it.
No, you just said something that wasn't true. I have evidence. That they target people. Would you like me to pull some of it up?
There's no evidence that Israel targets civilians. None.
Would you like me to pull some of it up?
Pull up whatever you want. I'm sure it's from Al Jazeera.
Let me ask you a question.
I'm sure it's from Al Jazeera.
It's actually not. But let me ask you a question before we do it. Sure. If I pull up evidence, even if you don't agree with it, if I'm using evidence, would that then nullify your claim that it was anti-Semitism?
You don't have evidence. It doesn't matter what you show me.
You hear yourself. You're saying no matter what I show you, it won't count as evidence to you. Why? Yeah. Why won't it count as evidence even if I show it to you?
Because Israel is not doing this. There's no evidence.
You have to circular argument.
No, because the so-called evidence is contrived from sources.
I agree. Which one? Which evidence is contrived?
Anti-Israel bias.
Hold on, pause.
There is simply no evidence.
Hold on. You haven't seen the evidence, correct?
I haven't seen the non-existent evidence. Of course, I have not seen non-existent evidence.
No. I didn't ask you to see not. Okay, I know you think this is coming off better than it is. This is what I'm saying. You're saying you haven't seen any evidence. I'm saying, let me show you the evidence. You're saying, no matter what you show me, it won't count as evidence because it doesn't exist. And I'm saying, how do you know it doesn't exist? And you're saying, because I haven't seen any. And I'm saying, well, let me show you. And you're saying, but it doesn't matter what you show me. That's a circle. You're saying that no matter what you see, it won't count as evidence to you.
Show me a targeting system where the Israeli Air Force said, let's go target.
There have been numerous examples from do you trust Human Rights Watch?
No, God, no. Nor should you.
Do you trust Amnesty International?
No, God, no. Nor should you.
What human rights organization do you trust? Name one.
I'd have to think. I don't trust most. They're all pretty much left-wing activist groups.
Okay, so you don't trust human rights organizations. Do you trust the UN?
Hell no. We should pull out of the UN.
What international legal bodies do you trust?
NATO.
Okay, so you know NATO doesn't do investigations of these things, right?
They do all the time. NATO conducts investigations.
What investigation of Gaza did NATO do?
Why would they do an investigation of Gaza?
I just said they don't do that.
I'm saying, Mark, like I said, the people who are going to say Israel's doing this are groups that have a predisposition to hating Israel, like Amnesty International, like the United Nations. If Bibi Netanyahu takes a shit, the United Nations has a censor of him. Come on.
I'll ask one more question, then we'll leave it alone. When those dozens, if not 100, I don't remember the exact number, but at the Kuwaiti circle 2 months ago, when those unarmed people were waiting for food and they were shot unarmed, would you consider that targeting a civilian or no?
I'm not familiar with that. My understanding from what I've seen, and look, I'm open to evidence, but from what I've seen,
you just said anything I show you
no,
as evidence.
everything that I've ever seen has indicated that that the target of these situations has either been Hamas, who were trying to disrupt the flow of humanitarian aid because Hamas steals humanitarian aid, okay, or this was a situation where Hamas was actually shooting in to essentially civilians, also in an effort to disrupt.
Okay, you're just making things up. I respect what you're saying, but okay. Well, let me say this: the Israeli military. Okay, well, the Israeli military says that that's not what happened. So, are you saying that you disagree with the Israeli military too?
I'm not aware of the Israeli military making a tactical or strategic decision to shoot civilians.
Okay. All right. So you're saying this is a bizarre analysis to me, where you're literally saying, I don't know this incident, but I'm going to tell you that it was Hamas's fault. That's just a strange analysis.
What I'm saying is, I don't know this incident, but I'm aware of other incidents that have come up.
But I'm naming the one that makes the case for what I'm saying. It was on March 24th. I'm looking it up now just to give you the date, at the Kuwaiti roundabout. Hamas was not involved. The Israeli military doesn't say Hamas was involved. Actually, nobody says Hamas was involved. The Palestinians don't say it. The Israelis don't say it. The soldiers who were there don't say it. The only person saying that Hamas was involved is you, and you're the one person who says you don't know anything about it. So I'm going to respectfully say I'm going to go with the people who were there and not the person who says they don't know about it. But beyond that, I want to thank you because we have to run, but I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your insight. You're welcome back anytime you want.
No, I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you, sir.